Troy Fassbender attending from East Lansing and Ingham County.
Syed Haider.
I'm also in East Lansing, and I think I'm from Clinton County.
Okay. Joel Lichty.
Joel Lichty and East Lansing, Ingham County.
Broke up a little bit there, but I can see that you're present. Scott McCormick.
East Lansing and Ingham County.
Julie Rojeski.
I am attending from East Lansing, Ingham County.
All right. Josh Cooper. He had indicated in an email to the group that he would be late joining this meeting, so we'll mark him as that, and we'll go from there.
All right, are we set for approval of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a, help me, do we need a motion on this to approve the agenda? Do we need a,
Yes, please.
okay. Do we have someone there that wants to?
Yes, I so move.
Second.
All right, all in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
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 Okay. We'll go on to the minutes. And Nicole, is that something that we maybe want to delay in approval?
That's fine to do that. I just sent them to the group. So
Let me ask a question. Do we have a majority? Do we have a quorum?
Oh,
yes, we do.
Well, if we have a quorum, we can just go on with it.
whatever's appropriate here.
I think that's what, wasn't that what you were suggesting, John? That we move on?
If we can, and I guess we would look at those next month then.
If I may, I did make sure that they were reposted on the agenda, so they are live right now on the
Great.
agenda on the website. So if that helps anything.
Thank
Yeah, and
you.
I just sent them around. Did you want to move that to later into the agenda, John?
If we can,
Right.
I'm not in a position to bring those up where I'm at, so. We can, if we want to address that a little later. Let's do that then. We'll move on that would take us on to written communications if we have any.
I do not have any.
All right. And then communications from the audience.
So there are 3 people in here. I just sent Emily a comment. I can't click on them to give them access to, I don't know what's going on. Emily, I don't know if you know what might be happening. There we go. Okay, I got it. Caller with the last 3 digits, 240. You can now address the commission.
Hi, this is Diane Wing from the Chesterfield Hills neighborhood. I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 396. You can address the commission. Caller with the last 3 digits, 396. You have yourself on mute if you'd like to address the commission. Caller with the last 3 digits, 396. You are still muted if you'd like to address the commission.
They may have to hit *6 to be able to broadcast.
They're unmuted now. If you'd like to speak, 396. I think we'll have to move on. And that's everybody that we've got today.
All right. We can move on to the business agenda for appointments of chair and vice chair positions. So I'm looking for someone, we have new members that we didn't have a year ago. I'm looking for someone to take the chair position. You can tell I don't come with Robert's rules here handy, and I think the meetings, especially on Zoom here, require someone a little sharper than I am. So I'd be happy to have someone take that over.
Scott, you're on mute.
I don't know that I really have the time to do it, but I've been running international trade associations under Robert's rules for the last 20 years. Organizations of all 12 automakers for half of that or a third of that time. I would be glad to be the vice chair, but in the absence of anyone being the chair, I would do that for this group.
All right, we've got a helper here, so I appreciate your advice along the way too, Scott. So who would like to step up for chair?
Okay, I guess I lose. I would like a vice chair because there may be occasions when I'm not able to participate and we need to have somebody that can chair the meeting. Julie.
I'd be willing to stay on as vice chair.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah. It's been a very demanding role this year.
The other thing I would like the commission to consider is that normally when I send out a meeting agenda, if someone can't make it, I ask if they would offer their proxy to vote with the majority of the commission. That way, it's not any one position, and I haven't seen in the time I've been participating much dissent across the commission. So for Nicole, that's what I would recommend going forward, because that way we can move through the agenda if we have a quorum, regardless of who may be late or absent.
Lisa?
I generally just stay back and observe, but I don't think that's permissible in government settings.
Okay. Fair point.
If only, right? If only.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Scratch it.
So do we, so Scott, would you be willing to take on chair with Julie as vice chair?
I will self-nominate. I believe Julie has self-nominated, but we do need a motion to approve in a second.
Okay, so can I do both then and then say that we have Scott appointed as chair and Julie as vice chair and all those, now we need a motion, I guess.
We need a second. That would be the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Thanks for your vote of confidence.
Any discussion by the commission?
Well, thank you. Any discussion means you're stepping up and stepping forward here, right? All right, so all those in favor of Scott for chair and Julie for vice chair, say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, I appreciate that. And that moves us on to topics for this year's meetings, of which Nicole had a list of last year's that we had made and kind of dropped by the wayside. I wonder if that's something we could pick up on that list. And of course, that doesn't mean we can always bring them in at that month, does it? I mean, they may be tied up or.
Correct.
Yeah, we can try our best.
For the benefit of Joel and Scott, in the past, I guess it was the year before last, our then chair, Thomas Bauman, arranged for us to have a guest speaker every month. And that actually was really informative and helpful in giving some background and shape to our conversation for those meetings when we didn't have lots of business. And so I guess that's the question on the table is if we want to revisit and re-embrace that idea, or if we want to just leave it open for matters that are brought ahead in front of us.
Can you give me an idea of the kinds of speakers you had?
Sure, we
topics?
had folks from CATA, we had the chair of the police department come, and in some cases they had presentations, and in some cases it was just a chance for us to ask questions or have a conversation. Who else came? Somebody from, was it Ingham County Roads, maybe?
Yeah.
We also had,
Commission, right?
we had a presentation from the MSU on the non-motorized transportation plan.
Yep.
Well done, presentation.
Did somebody from Meridian Township Transportation Commission that was newly formed come?
I feel like we talked about it, but I'm not sure we ever were able to find a date that worked.
We
But
Can I
that would
make
be
a
a great-
suggestion? What I would like the commission do is to just kind of email Nicole who they would like, or what function, or what demographic, or what public entity they would like to either have for questions or to talk about what their role is, that we can go over and then start soliciting those speakers.
Yeah.
I think that'd be excellent.
So if we could do that before the next meeting, say give everybody 2 weeks so that we have a list and the agenda to look at and vet.
Are you comfortable serving in that role, Nicole?
Yeah, just to be able to compile the list from everybody, that's fine.
Is that within your purview of duties? Or is that something that we should probably handle internally? You tell me.
Well, the question is that unless somebody wants to be that point of contact, I mean, I could always do it. You could just send it to me, but again, it's a protocol thing. I don't know whether they should go
Right,
through
that's what I'm asking, yeah.
planting, offices first.
Yeah, because we can't have everybody email each other and start the conversation, because then we get into the
Right.
Opens Meeting Act. So, moving forward with, providing suggestions, and then a list of suggestions could be emailed out to the group,
For discussion at the next
for
meeting?
discussion at the
Okay.
next meeting. And
Okay.
that would be fine. So there
Okay.
wouldn't be any, and I think, Scott, that's what you were going for, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, I was just looking for somebody that could harvest that information and send it out in some compiled form.
Perfect.
Because then I would put that on the agenda anyway.
Great.
I would need that information. So
Correct.
Great.
not a big deal.
Great. Thanks, Nicole.
Can I just, I think in the past, we also talked about if we can invite other commissions, like Planning Commission, or, to have a conversation with them, that will be helpful also.
Agreed. That would be one to add to the list then.
All right, are we all comfortable with that? And we'll follow up, and are we sending that back to you, Nicole, then? All right. And with that, obviously, if we were to invite MDOT here, I would personally like to discuss speed limits on Grand River, right as it changes to the higher speed rate at People's Church. So that may be a certain part of MDOT that might be, I don't know, they may send someone who's involved in that. So I would guess we would need to have a concern of why we would like to invite them on, or some questions we might raise.
Correct.
Sound right?
Yes, some agenda topics or, points of discussion that you would like them to go over, whether it's, signals or pedestrian crossings or, speed limits or bike lanes or anything affiliated with MDOT infrastructure, we can narrow that down a little bit for them. So we get the right people here too.
Well, I'd actually like to see it broadened a little bit. Rather than inviting them in to talk about a specific area or street or road, I'd rather have them come in to provide us guidance on what the justification and process is for getting something changed. Because that's more valuable to us over time than this particular street or that particular intersection.
Good comment. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we can always, by example, bring up in context whatever the current issue we have is, but I would like them to look at coming in as if they're providing us with guidance. It's an information rather than telling us how to solve a problem.
Correct.
All right. Some good ideas there. Excellent, Scott. Thank you. With that, we can move on. Do we need any decision on that, or we're all set there? Okay. So that would take us into the Highland Avenue speeding concerns, of which you sent out. And I'm wondering, I'm looking at some of that data, some advice or on the number of cars and where we would see where it's a real speeding issue, looking at the results on that. So, Scott, is that Scott House? Is that someone that you want to address for it?
I'm going to defer back to Nicole on that because she's best prepared to talk that.
All right. Thank you. All right, Nicole.
Yeah, so in looking at the information affiliated with the Highland, one of our tasks was to go through and make sure that the signatures that we were provided were accurate and all accounted for and met the measures set forth in the traffic calming action plan. And we went through, we did highlight some addresses that like the signature didn't match the person that had signed the document, and that's probably because they're rental properties. But even outside of that, they do seem to have enough signatures to move forward, into the next steps for moving forward with a further traffic study to be able to look at what could actually be done in this section of Highland Avenue per the traffic calming action plan. Is it the phase 1 or phase 2 or phase 3 at this point? And Josh Cooper had sent some information to the group on his thoughts on that, and we can look at that, or maybe he'll pop on soon and he can chime in on that as well. So, the next steps is we validated the signatures. Now we need to move forward and figure out a traffic study per se. Obviously, we can't do specific traffic counts, like we normally would because it's winter, but we might be able to set up the radar sign on Highland again, going each direction to be able to secure those counts, to be able to verify that information to make sure it does fit within the
I'm in the commission.
fit within the categories of the action plan. So that's kind of our next step here. And, we do need to figure out a way forward, per one member's, I had his email up here a second ago, but per one member's comment, it was to start with, police enforcement and looking at that information a little bit closer. But there's a lot of data there that was sent out from the past 2 Septembers in that area, but more would need to be gathered to be able to actually figure that out. And the winter provides a little bit of a challenge too, because people don't go as fast in the winter. Snow does slow some people down.
So how is this collected then? You say the radar, this isn't in addition with the radar sign, the radar, are we sending out the radar trailer that I remember that warns students? No, this is.
So typically if we went and did traffic counts on a street, we have like the little tubes that go across the road. Obviously we don't install those in the winter because our snowplows would not be very kind to them. And that's counterintuitive for our own budgeting purposes. So, and again, in the winter, it's not as much of a, I can't say it's not as much of a speeding concern because I'm sure there are people that are speeding down there no matter what. But it would be to set forth an action to, do that traffic study to verify where we need to go to be able to help the speeding along this section. So if maybe the first part is enacting some additional police oversight with the divisions or the neighborhood liaisons, Scott, you can help me with this one, that the police department is moving forward with. Ken went over that at the last meeting. What was it called, Scott?
Yeah, so Chief Johnson's starting a new neighborhood resource teams. So the city's going to be divided. This would be a great problem from the tackle. And, you know, looking at these speeds, you know, if we were to use this data from the radar signs, it doesn't really meet the thresholds to do a lot here. And the question might be, well, it's a radar sign. People see the speed limit, they're going to adjust speeds. Well, we've done trials where we had the speed shown and the speed not shown, and there was not a difference in behavior. People are going to speed regardless of the sign being there. Keeps the honest people a little more conscientious, but the people are going 40, the ones that really making the neighborhood uncomfortable are going to do what they're going to do. So I think this would be a great topic to tackle with the police as we look at how to address these issues here in a more rapid manner.
So then what is the next step then for the commission here? On these, looking at what the data we have thus far, and it looks like number of vehicles is way down. It's two fewer days, but of course this is 2020, and everything's off the books this year or past year.
Correct.
So would we? Is this something that will be revisited in the spring again for?
Yes, it would be revisited in the spring for, you know, a traffic study to be able to solidify the data. But I think a memo or something from the Transportation Commission to Chief Johnston indicating, hey, we'd like to, you know, a little bit more enforcement in this area per your neighborhood. Not gonna
resource teams. Yeah. So, but this would be a great problem for them to tackle.
Would be a great first step in this interim phase.
And so
and could we CC the neighborhood president or on that memo that, you know, that's basically our recommendation is that the police chief assign this to their radar, literally, figuratively.
Absolutely. And there was a couple,
okay.
There was I think two people that brought this to the commission meeting last time.
Yeah.
Including them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a wise course of action.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed in the action plan for addressing the issue here, you have a letter that would be sent to the residents or whoever, or the speeder. Is that correct? It would be, it had listed, it's from the East Lansing Police Department. Is that going to be an officer on patrol who would identify that car? Then how would that letter go out?
I would assume if there was a police officer in the neighborhood that they would be addressed by them. I would have to reread that section, John.
Okay, and I mean it says the East Lansing Police Department is working jointly with neighborhoods throughout the city to encourage and enhance traffic safety, and then it sets out, we have been informed on this date that this vehicle with this license plate traveling at a speed of in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and it says your vehicle speed was monitored by, so I'm assuming that would be an officer on patrol then. It's pretty clear, but it's going to need officers at the site, at the spot.
So John, you highlight one of the challenges with this traffic calming plan that's antiquated and it's staff intensive. And, you know, that might be a topic for the commission to tackle this coming year with the assistance of some consultants, because at one point this envisioned people following people through neighborhoods to look for cut through traffic. And, you know, but then the other option are license plate readers, but people get very uncomfortable with that. And short of photographs of people speeding, then it's difficult to harvest that data. So there's some challenges here to align, there's technology, but how to align those interests and work with the police moving forward. That's an opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great point that has been brought up here, because this traffic calming action plan was developed in like 2001.
Oh,
So
wow.
at this point, it's 20 years old, and having this commission tackle it would be a great endeavor for this upcoming year to be able to update that and have, there's a lot of things that are still valid in that, a lot of information that can still be used, but maybe not having the letter go out with people's information in it, as you pointed out, John, would be a good thing maybe to put by the wayside.
All right. Well, there's a number of pages there to sift through. So yeah, that could be some challenges there that ought to be addressed.
I think it's about 7 pages long. So
Yeah.
There's a fair amount there, but it's not untacked. It's not something that is too overwhelming. It's not a 50-page dissertation there.
But it's also in conjunction with the police department then as well for any action taken, at least for speeders.
Right.
I mean, this is really the letter I read. It really is a polite letter going out that it notes that you're on notice. It does say this is not a notice of violation and will not be included in any records relating to your vehicle. But it's a very polite way of saying you're on notice, I think. But
yeah, I mean, some of the stuff just doesn't scale to the resources that the police department. I mean, we can recommend whatever, but they don't have the resources to carry it out. So, I mean, some of this stuff just isn't viable, including that letter. I don't see how. If they caught somebody speeding, they would probably just pull them over and give them a warning if they were actually there to see it. But I don't know.
So what I'm hearing you recommend, Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, please, is that we consider taking this on as a challenge to try to take a first stab at updating it, full knowing that it would require the sign off from other agencies, including the police. But in the absence of anyone else being able to start the process, this would be a good project for us to look at.
Correct, because this project,
And that would be an excellent topic to bring those other agencies in to talk to us about.
Correct.
Right.
And, this action plan is what people from the community come to the Transportation Commission to, with, looking at this document, say, you need to solve my problem by this document. So
right.
It's something that should start here as kind of a revamp.
Great.
And yes, there would be input from many departments, including Public Works.
Right.
So how do we carry on at this step?
I think the most appropriate thing to do is to note in the minutes that we are going to address developing the update to the action plan. And, at our next meeting or before that, if anybody has any ideas, what we should start doing is fleshing out, what does that mean to update the action plan? What is it that we want to achieve by doing that update? Who do we need to get to weigh in on it? Who do we need to vet it? Since it was the last one happened 20 years ago, we can look to that to see if there's any guidance in terms of how they created it. But I think this group with Scott and everyone else can probably address how we need to go forward.
Scott, can I think if it is important to highlight what are the challenges or what are the shortcomings of the existing plan. So that will help us thinking, or inviting other people so that we can address those challenges.
Yeah, I think maybe the first step is for us to send us the current action plan so that we can revisit that and see what's in it.
I sent that out with the link to the agenda at the end of December.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that is the latest one that we have.
And with these, what we're looking at would fall under the level 1 possibly, dealing with Highland.
Correct. It would be a recommendation to, send a memo to the police department for their neighborhood liaison to look at or to review and take part in as a first step. And with the second step being to evaluate it with a traffic study in the spring for Highland.
All right. And this action plan, I mean, I look at level 1 here, and one of the items is also the speed radar trailer. If that's not effective, that's probably something we would look at for.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have
In
a
20,
per se. We have the portable radar sign that we just have one. We have a permanent one on Bertram, and then we have the one that we can move around the city.
well, I think that's a good thing to look at, is to see what traffic control devices have changed from 20 years ago from when this was written.
Correct.
I mean, that's kind of the fundamental aspect of how you control the traffic, is what those devices are, whether they're mobile or fixed. So I think, and I just pulled up the document to look at it, and they have 12 devices listed, and cameras aren't in them. Cameras are not on the list.
Right.
So I mean, I'm sure that there's other things that have happened in the last 20 years that we need to add to the list.
Yep. And then looking at this document as a whole, to, look at it as something that residents can go to help them through the process too. And if people are looking for, what do they do? We just had Lilac come for that parking concern. Well, we're still going through the same process for the traffic calming, or the action plan for traffic calming. Well, is that applicable to the parking issues or anything else within the neighborhood? So it might need to be expanded a little bit too, to think about the issues that are coming before the commission.
Mm-hmm.
So the action plans that have been developed over time, they're fairly siloed, I would say. In other words, the parking plan isn't harmonized with the calming plan, isn't harmonized with the other plans.
This is the only plan that is currently enacted besides anything that is in the ordinance.
Okay.
But there's other things that might happen outside of this that will be initiated by council, that council through the city manager will direct staff to implement. So parking studies and things outside of this. This allows residents to have a venue to express concerns of streets and speeds and the safety of those. And that might actually help nest into the non-motorized plan. And this is a great time with the neighborhood resource teams and the police coming online to partner with that, because they have a lot of resources or good insight.
And for clarification, like as far as like the measurement goes, for the studies and like what we consider safe, like 85th percentile, like above 33 miles per hour, like that's pretty much standard industry stuff. Is that right? It's not, that's like recommended to us by whatever transportation agencies and all that sort of stuff, right?
So if you go
ahead.
So if you go to AASHTO or the state of Michigan, how they set speed limits, it's at the 85th level. So that's one of the downsides of the recent changes to the state of Michigan, how they set speed limits on state trunk lines. If you do a traffic study on a state trunk line, you have to guarantee this is just information that's applicable here. We have to sign off that we'd live by those findings. And if it comes in at 40 miles per hour and it's currently 25, we have to abide by the 40 miles per hour. They go with the 85th percentile. At the local level, we have more flexibility here. So that's just a different set of rulemaking requirements. But 85th percentile does tell you certain things. Now, also this radar sign data, we do share this with the police so they know when to look. So typically in their speeding, there's typically 1 or 2 people that are chronic speeders. And if you see it like every night at 10:30, someone's coming home or there's a delivery person cutting through the neighborhood. That's good intelligence for the police to be able to focus their efforts. So that's the benefit of these radar signs and getting more data so they can focus their efforts as well. So it works a couple ways.
All right, do we, can we include this then with this, will we bring this up again on February agenda for some additional input? Either us working, I think there's more to this than I'm reading there for the action plan. That's going to take some effort. So how do we proceed?
One recommendation for tackling the action plan, is to develop a subcommittee. And that might be a group of people to talk with police, and then they could bring their findings back to the full commission.
I think that's exactly what I was going to suggest. So, because we've had subcommittees in the past with the bicycle friendly community, application, and, that's probably something we'll want to get into again as well, but developing that committee would be a great start, because then you can get people to really, look at it together and bring some ideas back to the group.
So Julie and I have a job now, so we're looking for volunteers to head that committee. Troy, Syed, Brad.
Sign it to.
For a subcommittee, how many members would you like to see on that for a subcommittee?
I'd like to see at least 3. I'd like to see 3 different perspectives. When you have 2 people, you have, there's always how the interpersonal dynamics work between those people. If you have 3 people, 3 can tend to balance out strong or weak positions.
Would you consider staff as one of those members and possibly?
Certainly, of course, actually that would be of huge value.
And how would, so we would, 2 from the commission or at least 2, and then a staff member from city?
I would let the 3 choose their own leader. Or unless somebody wants to volunteer for it.
I'll serve on the subcommittee with some help and direction.
I can do that too.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But what will be the timeline for this?
Oh, anytime tomorrow.
How about tonight then?
Well, I think what we ought to do is take a moment to look at the plan that you have.
Yeah.
And figure out how much of it needs really to be amended, adjusted, or updated. Get some input from Scott. Scott, would you participate on that committee? Even if it's ex officio.
Yep.
Because I think, with his guidance, it can tell you, this is the areas that we haven't updated, or these things haven't, the world hasn't changed here. And so we can focus on the areas that need to be revisited.
My suggestion would be, as far as process, for us as a full commission to spend between now and our next meeting delving into it, so that we each have a chance to weigh in on what we see as the biggest concerns and priorities, and so that our subcommittee members have a sense of what we are thinking as a commission. Then they can go off and do the more in-depth research work, collaborations, conversations, etc. Keep us posted, and then, when they have the magical solution at the end, they can come back to us. But I think we need to start with us identifying what we see are the absolute conversations that have to be had, versus just waiting to the end for them to find out that it turns out Julie, Joel, and Troy have these very significant concerns that just weren't brought up.
Plus, we all need to be conversant in the document.
Correct.
That's the kind of guidance I'm looking for. Thank you.
Excellent, Julie. Thank you.
How would we submit that feedback? Like, what is the proper way to do that?
Probably would we have to discuss that at a meeting?
Yeah.
So I think that would be on our agenda for next meeting, was be to have a larger, lengthier conversation about that document to give guidance to our subcommittee colleagues.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Julie. It will give us an opportunity to go through it first, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And maybe, you know, it will be good to do some research to look at how other people are doing. We have to do some benchmarking, right? So,
Right.
so
All right, Nicole, if you'll have that on for the agenda for the February meeting then.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, we have the homework we have before our next meeting is twofold: to brainstorm potential guests that we would like to welcome to future meetings in this coming year, and to review, not only review and read, but really put some thought and effort and research into suggestions and recommendations for how we can update the plan.
Thank you. Yes. Anything else then on that, if we bring that on the agenda for next month? I think, Julie, you spelled it out very well for us. Thank you. This is going to require likely not just city staff, but police as well, right? I
anticipate that as the conversations get going, we will find that there are many entities whose expertise and approval and engagement we want. The police is obviously going to be one, but I anticipate that there will be other commissions and other organizations that we will engage with as well. So these could be all part of our recommendations.
Yeah, I think the important thing is to identify who all the stakeholders are.
Yes.
And whoever the stakeholders are, they need to have a voice in the process at some point.
And Scott, if may I ask, is it this plan is specific to East Lansing? So do we have similar plans for, let's say, Meridian, you know, or some other cities close by?
You know, it's kind of interesting when this came out, there was similar topics, or this plan mirrored another city's plan from the history, from what I understood it. And it's tough to develop these because you can make it 7 pages or 100 pages and I'll more or less go through a similar process. I think that the biggest challenge here is how to update how to measure success, or what are the countermeasures, and but also that tie in with enforcement as well. But we can look at part of that. We can see what we have on record, or see what we have access to Lansing's documents and whatnot. We can share that with the next meeting agenda as well.
Scott, if it's possible, if you stumble upon those documents and can circulate them in advance of next meeting, I know I would like to be able to read such documents as part of my research in preparation for next month's meeting.
Not a problem, because Lansing had a pretty robust plan that was a little very similar, but a little more, just has Lansing's slant to it.
Thank you.
To me, shorter is better, as long as it works. Rather than putting, 30 pages, it will be too much. But if we can, I think that what you mentioned is the problem with the effectiveness, how to measure the effectiveness. That for that, you need data for that.
Well, Syed, that can be on your goal list as a member of this subcommittee.
Sure, I'm doing too much research. I can add this to it too.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, if there is data, I can volunteer. I can do analysis myself. It will not be easy for me to collect data, but if you have some data, I can do analysis of the data.
All right, are we set? Nicole, do we need a motion or anything to move this on to next month, or where does this stand?
Well, we've kind of divulged in. We started with Highland, and then we went into the subset of Highland with the traffic calming action plan. So back to the Highland point, the goal there would be to formulate a memo to be sent to the neighborhood resource teams on the police to request additional oversight in this area, and to move forward with doing further traffic study a further traffic study in the spring.
And that should go out after this meeting to go to the, would be to the Highland residents, or do they have?
I think the original idea was that it would be a memo written by who? Nicole?
The current chairman.
The current chairman. Okay, congrats, Scott. A letter
No,
written.
I'm not chairman till
Oh,
next
to
month.
John. Okay, sorry. You haven't taken office yet. But a letter written to the chief, right? Recommending that this issue on Highland Avenue be something that is taken up by the neighborhood resource team, right? For conversation. And that then based on that conversation, we would recommend a potential traffic study in the spring or even next fall if we feel like those data would be more instructive when students are back in town. That's my own personal bias, but we can say, you know, in the future sometime. But have that addressed to the chief with a CC to the residents who have spoken up on this topic, as well as the neighborhood president.
Yes.
Do we have a list of all of the points of contacts for all the neighborhood associations in the city?
It's definitely on the website, and
Okay.
yeah,
Besides sending it just to those complaining residents, we ought to send it to the neighborhood association president in that area that he can inform, you know, the other residents, because, you know, there's could be somebody that's silent on it that's concerned.
And one of the callers, Diane Wing, has been serving in some of that that role for Chesterfield.
Okay.
Great resource for us. So,
and I'm mentioning this not to get us further afield again, but because if I don't say it now, I may forget by the time we revisit it. But that may be a recommendation that we want to incorporate into the future iterations of this plan document, is to be more intentional about the role neighborhood presidents can play in solving some of these traffic challenges, because this is the second meeting in a row where we've said, really, this is a neighborhood issue that should be addressed by the neighborhood leadership. So it seems like that's a trend we may want to articulate fully.
All right, that's a pretty tall order, and now that you've just gone through here. So a lot of that went right over my head as far as the requirements here to move on. So I'm not sure how to proceed.
Well, I think we've already made a point that it should be on next week's agenda, and we have two elements that we're going to do. One is to think about who we want to invite to talk, and the other one is to review the action plan just so that we have familiarization with it. As long as we've got that in the minutes, that's what we've collectively agreed to do, we don't need to make a motion on it. We only need to make a motion on things for which we need a consensus of a specific communication to the outside world. For the inside world of the commission, you don't need to move on those elements.
shall we make a motion on Highland?
Yes.
And
how would we word that?
John, are you feeling okay, or are you feeling overwhelmed?
I'm this is taxing me. I would need to revisit minutes and or the meeting itself to get all this down. So I'm not sure. We need before the February meeting, you want a note to go out to the neighborhood association only, or to residents?
No, it's a note to the chief of police.
The chief of police.
Yes, with a carbon copy sent also to the neighborhood president and to residents like Diane, who's on today's call, and the two people who are on record for having spoken on the Highland issue at the last meeting, right? So those will be the people who receive the letter. And then the body of the letter will be, you know, dear chief of police, I can't remember his name, sorry. Johnson, dear Chief Johnson, as chair of the Transportation Commission, this issue was brought to our attention. We are recommending that you assign us to your neighborhood resource team, right, for review of these data and for conversation that engages residents about about how we can help support and solve this problem. We are also recommending that at some point in the future, spring or fall, we do some follow-up traffic study.
So for the sake of brevity, I so move that what Julie just said and has been recorded in the meeting be incorporated into the letter.
A second.
We would need a second.
Troy just did.
Any discussion on the topic?
Thank you, Scott. Are we ready to vote on the motion then? All right. Julie's motion. Right.
Thank you so much.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you. So, I'm going to look for someone to pick that up and run with that.
For the sake of moving this forward, I will pick that up and run with it. I think traditionally, John, the confusion is that the chairperson, which should be you, is the person who would write that. But
Right.
for the sake of recognizing that we want to get this moving, I will go ahead and compose a memo. And I'm not sure, did I submit that via you for review? I mean, I would like someone else to be able to look at it, but I'm not really sure what the appropriate.
I'll be glad to look at it.
Okay, so
Does that need to go to Nicole? I mean, this.
Actually, what should happen is once it's put into writing,
yeah,
it should be circulated to the commission.
right.
And if there is no objection, we move forward, or unless somebody has some wordsmithing to it.
Yeah.
I don't think you can send it to the whole commission because of OMA.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
Julie,
Yes.
just one more thing. So this
Yes.
memo is as a result of this data we are seeing right now in the report, right? So we need to refer to it, right? Based on the
Right.
preliminary data speed, we found there are some vehicles which are overspeeding, right? So we need to
Yes.
mention this because this is the preliminary data, right? Based on that, so what will entail in the detailed traffic study?
I'm not actually going to articulate what that's going to be or when it will
Yeah.
happen. I think this will be a conversation that happens between the
Yeah,
police.
the police
and
know
I'm
how to
guessing,
do traffic studies.
yeah, so I don't know. I don't
Right.
anticipate they're going to want us to provide guidance on that. I think,
They won't be doing the traffic study.
right, it would be your outfit, right, Nicole?
No, I'm just asking Nicole, and so what will be the more detailed study? What else it will give us? That's what I'm asking.
It would give us a little bit of a tighter numbers on traffic counts and speeds throughout the area, and it could be for a little bit of a longer duration.
Longer period. Okay. So you
About
are
a week, and that's a pretty standard
yeah.
amount of time to be able to collect data, because I mean it's a lot of data, even as you've seen in what was provided. That's a lot of data just for 2 weeks. It's not 2 separate week sessions, but it just summarizes it for that instance.
So in this data, Scott, I'm looking at 85th percentile is 31 miles per hour. So typically we want to be close to the posted speed limit.
Or under, yeah.
Or under, right? The 85th percentile. Okay.
So, as far as form, this just needs to be an email to the chief, copy Nicole, and going, hey, we talked about this. We would think this would be a great topic for the neighborhood resource team, and DPW staff will work with you to help facilitate this.
I was all ready to get my wax seal out and do a in-person delivery. It's just an email. How disappointing.
It'll come, Julie. Someday it'll come.
This was getting very formal, so I was just going to lean into it.
Yeah.
Okay, I will draft an email and run it by Scott just to make sure that at least one other commissioner has his eyes on it, and then we will send it off and get it taken care of.
Thank you. Are we set then to move on to committee reports?
I think so.
Do we have committee reports?
We don't have any subcommittees at this point.
We will.
We will.
We will, yeah.
Not next meeting, but after that we will.
right? Do we have, where are we at? Moving on. Reports from chair and board members. Do we have some comments from Lisa or Scott from the city? Are we on to that?
Well, this could be reports from chair and board members. So,
Okay.
you guys?
Do we
Chair?
have? I have, I'm going to bring this up, going back to the November meeting on the Lilac parking issue. It was determined that we were not going to allow parking or no parking for everyone that wished to back out of the driveway. But for my review and for a letter that needs to be sent yet, we're dealing with a rental property across from the driveway, and the only person that stood in opposition to this and that spoke at that meeting was a across the street neighbor, and they back out into the side of the street where there is no parking allowed. So they never have an issue there, but they were against this no parking from here to corner adjacent to them by the rental property on what is a very narrow street with no defined curb or, so I was challenged, and I talked to Nicole about the minutes, to look at the minutes on how to send this out. So this has not been sent out. It looks to me like I didn't see that we solved the problem. We sent it on and said, here, neighborhood association, you solved the problem. And I don't see it being solved with that being a rental property. If you are next to a rental property, you maybe know that changes hands often, and they're usually an absentee owner. And with the only other person commenting on this in opposition of that never has an issue because they back out into there's no parking on the south side of Lilac. So I was challenged on the proper way to get this out, and I didn't think we'd solved it properly.
I don't think I believe I mentioned that I didn't see that we were the people that were supposed to solve the problem. I said, if we start getting into everybody that has a problem with a neighbor, whether he owns it or rents it or whatever, of a single parking issue, now you're talking about, well, now I've got to displace cars from this street, and it might have to go to the next street. Now you have to pull all the people in that street. And I said, you run yourself down a rabbit hole very quickly by trying to address one person's problem. And I've ran in Plymouth, I ran my homeowners association for 20 years. And it's the homeowner association's responsibility to ensure that whoever the owners of that property is there are compliant with the rules of the homeowner association, which are the same for every homeowner association in the state, has been for 40 years. And if we push that for us to dealing with everyone, every time somebody's got a parking issue, they're going to bring it to this forum, and that's not an appropriate use of our time. Appropriate use of our time is to dealing with things like updating a 20-year action plan, or addressing a letter to the police chief to say this is where we think we need a traffic study. We're not the arbiters of behavior. We can't be. All we do is provide guidance and respond to the concerns of the citizens, whether that's a police agency or city clerk or a resident or Troy, but we can't go intermediate from every single little parking issue or speeding issue. We have to deal with it in terms of the macro flow of traffic, not the micro incident that occurs neighborhood by neighborhood. We're here to solve a higher order set of problems.
Where would that go then? Where should that homeowner go with that problem then?
What I would do if I had a problem with one of my residents, and one of my problems came to me and said, he's got a broken down car that's parked in front of the yard, and then I just call up the city clerk in Plymouth because it's against the law to have inoperable vehicles parked, and they come out and tell them to remove it or ticket him. If I have somebody that has a teenager that's periodically parking and blocking somebody's drive, I would personally go over and talk to that family and say, you got to not do that. Now, some homeowners associations want anonymity for their officers, right? But the reality is that people don't always know when they're doing bad, right? They don't always know when they're causing a problem. So the role of that homeowner association and of the principals that are running it is to try to create some level of harmony in that community by being fair and by addressing what are vetted interests. I mean, I would have people complain about all kinds of things, but I said I won't act on them unless I get at least 3 people complaining about the same thing. Because it could be that Julie doesn't like Troy, and so she's going to complain about him all the time, right? And, which is understandable, Julie. I understand, but but the point is that our job is not to deal down at that micro level of issue in the community. Our responsibility is to provide the guidance, the thought leadership, the consensus of what we feel is the direction that should be taken to whatever agency then needs to take that. We as a commission are somewhat impotent. We don't have the ability to go make somebody do something. We have to rely on other agencies to take what we recommend and move that into process. So I appreciate that the guy has a problem. And if the homeowner association wants to call me and say, how do I address this? I'll be glad to talk to them.
Could the homeowner
Neighborhood association, not a homeowners association, just to let you know.
Yeah, pardon?
Well, thank you.
Neighborhood association.
Neighborhood association,
not
sorry.
homeowners
Okay.
association.
Could the neighborhood association come to the Department of Public Works and say, we'd like to solve this with the sign on the side of the street to say, instead of by permit only, to be no parking from here to corner, and move the signpost a dozen feet to the east? Could they do that?
And I would tell them the same thing that I just said, that causes a ripple effect. Besides the fact that you're just dealing with one homeowner. Go ahead.
Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a welcome to our new chair, and something that people with more experience on the board are more aware of. Our roles, or the roles of this committee, is set out by the city and in the city charter. So actually a lot of what this Transportation Commission does is an advisory role to the council, and is just that. When people come to the commission with concerns about speeds on their streets, that is what this commission is charged with. I welcome the opportunity to take a higher level look at it, but as Tip O'Neill famously said, all politics is local. And while this isn't exactly politics, all public service is local. And so this is the place where people would properly come. For instance, Highland, concerns about speeding or concerns about parking on streets, the council would say, there's a process with the Transportation Commission and we're sending you there. And then we wait for the Transportation Commission to make the recommendation back to the council. So it advises the council. It's also something of a cooling chamber where people can bring disparate ideas together and have them weighed by their neighbors on the Transportation Commission, and then that comes back to the council. It sort of depoliticizes it. We have just, on all of our commissions, but especially this one, an incredible wealth of talent and perspective that East Lansing is known for. And Chairman McCormick, you are certainly bringing a lot to that with your global knowledge, and it's fantastic. So you can do as much of the higher order thinking and higher order process as you wish. We welcome that, but we have saddled you with those day-to-day things. The other part is that we have neighborhood associations, but we don't really have homeowner associations within the city. So the city is the homeowners, the neighboring homeowners, very, very rarely, if ever, in the city of East Lansing have any kind of power whatsoever over their neighbors. The way the city is drawn out is Your problem with the street is a city problem with the street and not an association.
So let me ask a question. I'm only familiar with neighborhood associations. Do the homeowners association, the neighborhood associations not have the ability to lien members of the association when they're violating their own bylaws?
Mine certainly doesn't. And
I'm not saying do they, I'm saying do they have the ability to?
Right. Well, mine certainly doesn't. That may be different with some of the like condo associations. However, generally our neighborhood associations are drawn up simply based on what streets you live on. So the East Lansing is actually unusual in that it has an active role and an active city hall support for the neighborhood associations. But in many ways, those are largely arbitrary. They're just, Virginia Street and the neighboring street and the neighboring street. Okay, you're one group. Really, they can't put a lien on them. The neighborhood associations cannot.
Then I need to understand, and I'll do my research to understand a little bit more about what power the neighborhood associations have. However, my point is still that if you're down in the weeds, dealing with every minnow in the pond, you're not going to focus on the bigger issues that the city may need. So the important thing would be to figure out, how do we develop a process when somebody continually violates this parking issue, that proof can be given to the police or an authority that they can be then fined? So let's move it to the organization that has the ability, the power, and the authority over that infraction. We don't have any power over infraction. We have the power to change it to what might be an infraction, but we don't have an enforcement capability. And so I think the value of the commission is to say, well, okay, let's see, do we have hundreds of these parking violation issues, or do we have one? Do we have 100 of the speeding problems, or do we have one? And triage, what are the areas that are most important to us, that are creating the most problem, cost, injury, safety, whatever, and address how's the process that not us as commissioners, but us as the intermediary to the council and to the other agencies can give them direction or the capability to do an enforcement that right now they can't, because they don't have an awareness of the problem. You can only do enforcement if you have awareness. So tell the guy's parking there and you're the one complaining, take a cell picture, mail it to us, or mail it to the police, or email it to them, or whatever, and use the processes that we have in place.
So that's what she did, right? She followed the process to log the complaint, right? But of relevance is the parking in dispute is not illegal. It's just inconvenient to the one neighbor.
Correct.
And so she brought that to our attention. We reviewed it. We asked Scott to gather and his team to gather some more information around the distance between the sign and the stop sign and so on and so forth. And then this is what prompted these conversations about, are we a body that mediates neighbor disputes? Are we a body that will prioritize the needs of one homeowner over the needs of another, especially if that other person happens to be a renter versus an owner-occupied person? These are explicit conversations that we never had explicit.
Which even if they're a renter, that's immaterial.
It is to you and I. But in hearing how people make the case for accommodating the needs of this one homeowner, it is not immaterial to everyone.
Yeah, that's called a prejudice.
Yes.
Sorry, but that's what it is.
I agree. But if we hear about, that's why when you hear people saying, well, they're renters and so they don't know, and I shouldn't have to educate them every year. Well, you do.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what living in a community is about, unfortunately. And yes, it can be inconvenient, but
I agree.
It's not my job to mediate that.
Our purpose is not to make somebody else's life more convenient. Our purpose is to make mobility in the city safe and efficient, and to serve the needs of the many. So if somebody has a problem with a violation, I don't have a problem addressing that. If someone in this case had a problem with it's inconvenient for them, there are other bodies they can take it to. If they're uncomfortable walking across the street to whoever the renter is or neighbor or whatever, they can find somebody in their neighborhood that will. There's always some crotchety old guy like me that'll say, I'll go talk to him. Okay? In a kind and gentle way. But I think the question comes back to, and I very much appreciate what Lisa's saying, is that the neighborhood associations don't have the authority to manage, that by themselves, because they don't have the ability to lien property owners for violations.
Correct.
But we still shouldn't abrogate the responsibility of that neighborhood association
to have a conversation, at least.
Yeah. But I do apologize. I will go understand better how the neighborhood associations work and what authority they have.
All right.
And
Lisa?
Go ahead.
if I may, so I would also like to sort of apologize for jumping in. I just wanted to share those thoughts with our new
Oh,
chairman.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it very much.
The council liaison is supposed to be like a good Victorian child. We are to be seen and not heard. So I try to stick with that. So it's not my first nature, but I work at it. So perhaps Mr. McCormick and I can exchange a few emails in the next few days, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I think I can dig up the city's role for the Transportation Commission.
Right. But also, and I don't know if this helps soothe your worries at all, John, but we've had other parking related issues brought in front of us that I personally don't think rose to the occasion of needing significant changes, but there was enough consensus in an entire neighborhood that these changes were needed, that it justified reviewing and making recommendations. In this instance, we have one homeowner with a concern. We have another homeowner who, even though she is not affected in the same exact way, she is a homeowner in that neighborhood. And so we have to listen to her opposition as well. So we had one homeowner concerned, one homeowner who thought it wasn't a problem, and the neighborhood president who knew nothing about any of it. Right? That to me was not a significant enough participation in the whole neighborhood to justify making a change in the same way. So if you are in conversation with them and want to make a recommendation, then have the entire neighborhood come together and have this conversation, gather the signatures, make a recommendation. That's different in my mind, and a different conversation than one person who's saying it's inconvenient when someone parks across the street from her driveway.
Well, I think the neighborhood association did this back when.
Okay.
I mean, football parking filled the Flower Pot neighborhood, so they had no parking on the south side and parking by permit only on the north side. So obviously they've dealt with issues along the way and dealt with it like that, and they've achieved those goals. We are dealing with one issue here, so yes.
I mean, I believe this resident did get support from the neighborhood association initially upon this request.
She did. Okay, thank you for filling in that gap in my memory.
Yep. And based on the last meeting that we had, the new association president, came and, I think he spoke a little bit on that, and he had followed up with an email kind of indicating that he would address this with the neighbors. I did follow up with an email just to say, hey, how's it going? And I have not heard back from him. Just
all right. Well, I'll say I bring this up because of that property that's at issue is a rental. And when I first moved to East Lansing and bought a house here, I lived next door to a rental. And I can tell you that early on, and this goes back into the 80s, I was surprised at the turnover and went from graduate students who you didn't hear or see to the rugby team who never used indoor plumbing. And so there was a huge turnover there. And at present, we have families next door. So you think we were all one big happy family, but it's not always the case. So that's kind of where I thought this was more of a special issue because of that. So I'll proceed as we voted in November, and we'll leave it at that. and
I would like to add for Lisa that I very much appreciate your guidance, and I respect that what your role is, but I don't ever want you to hesitate, like Nicole does, to correct me or to educate me or to inform me. That makes what I do better.
Oh, thank you. It's that directive came down about a year ago from the previous mayor, and I sort of half joke about it. Besides, it prevents me from yammering on endlessly during your meetings. But I'm more than happy to yammer on endlessly over a cup of coffee or email. So thank
okay.
You. All right. Do we have other concerns from commission members, or anything needs to be brought up?
I would like to thank you, John, for your service and over time in this role. I've known you that long, but I respect what you've been trying to do and how you've managed the group. And I think the commission owes you a great debt of thanks for your efforts.
It's very different when you sit around a conference table and we're sitting across from each other. I find it much easier to carry out a meeting and then stumble along the way and with some help. So hopefully we get back to that at some point. I'd like to ask if Scott House, if you have any update from the federal MSU FCU coming into the city, any update on that, or also on the TechSmith?
MSU FCU is going to be discussed tomorrow, and there's not a lot of. I would tune in to council, and TechSmith was discussed by council a couple weeks ago. Might defer to Council Member Babcock on that, but I don't have the timeline off the top of my head when they would go, but they are. But it looks like it's moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And for the credit union, that's we're going to see groundbreaking soon. No,
Nicole can jump in on that because she's been in discussions with the developers.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say more towards end of January into February for that. You know, and that's kind of in conjunction that we've been talking with them because we are going to start our utility improvement project along Evergreen along the same time. So it's going to be nice and fun. Don't go that way for a while. So.
All right. That's going to be some disruption in that area.
Absolutely.
All right.
You know, John, I think there is a construction going on with this on Abbott. You know, on the right side when you cross Lake Lansing, that was the old home. You know, we discussed that, right? It's going quite.
Yes, we did.
There's quite a construction there, right?
Yes, Provision Living is that development.
Yeah, but they are finishing up in this year, 2021.
They're putting forth a phased effort. So yes, they may finish up, you know, their first phase this year because they are moving, you know, quite well. But it's going to be multiple years before they get through all of their phases, is my understanding. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it's going to take a little bit to get through all of their phases there.
Okay.
All right. I have one other item here. I'll bring up that Scott and I trade emails along the way because I live on Harrison Road. My trips downtown, always walking, have taken me past all the construction, and I'm dealing with the protected walkway there at People's Church. And Scott, the lights are out again on that walkway since last Wednesday. Somebody's pulling the plug or tripping over it. I'm always for the commission members here because that's my pathway downtown. There's barricades in the way. There's a barricade on one end or not the other. And I bring this up because as I see pedestrians downtown, and more so before this year, of course, with students and football weekends, if there's a blocked walkway they just walk in the street. They don't move. I mean, it's amazing to see. They're gonna go that way anyhow, and I'm trying to keep these walkways open. And again, and I don't know how many times, Scott, you and I trade emails on, can they please turn the lights back on in there? It's a dark tunnel. So again,
John, we'll hit them again, and we'll make sure our planning and code enforcement team know that as well. And your vigilance is appreciated. But that developer in particular has been responsive, and there are a lot of, that area is subject to people pulling on things and
no doubt.
at making creating challenges for them. But
I feel like the last contractor to close the door for the evening when they leave need to check that area and know that. And we could have we've had a long weekend. We are even with COVID. I mean, people are moving downtown, and I like to see it open. So here we are again. Yeah. So it's been a couple of years of dealing with protected walkways and trying to keep those open for us. And I think we're going to see an end there soon, hopefully. So any other comments or concerns for tonight's meeting? Thank you to Julie and Scott for taking over here. And are we set to adjourn?
I so move.
Nicole, I'm going to jump in here. Our next meeting then, can we get a date and time for our next meeting? I know you sent those out, but let's announce that tonight.
Yep, the date of our next meeting, I'm going to get my calendar so I don't mess this one up. Everybody should have that on their calendar already because I sent out the first, I think, 6.
You did.
Is February 1st
Okay.
at 6 p.m. on your calendar.
All right, we have that. Are we set to adjourn? All right.
I so
Thank
move.
you, everyone.
A second.
There we go. I can't wait for you to take over, Scott. All right.
So I'll do it. I'll do this differently. Is there any objection to changing the motion by acclamation? If none, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. All right,
Be safe,
all in
Be
February.
safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.